How do Black parents have the conversation about slavery with their children?
Hi, lovelies, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Belinda Strana. Thank you so much for all the love and support. To my returning subscribers, those people that share my videos, leave commentaries, and also educate each and every one of us. You guys are the real MVP.
And I thought to share where this bank Lord Mara actually asked a question about a conversation on how Black parents have conversation with their children about slavery. The thing is that he got lots and tons of answers from a handful. The thing is that, lovelies, I'm just going to roll the clip as well as some of other stitches I was able to put together. It's quite educating, lovelies. Please leave me your own thought in the comment section of what you think of this video, and please do not forget that we do not support any form of bullying and harassment. We are just here for educational and informative purposes. So, lovelies, if you have any maybe come of discussion you have with your, I also want to know, even though this man keep on nosing and being so obsessed to ask such a question. Anyways, let's dive into it, and we are going to come back to talk about.
So I just finished watching this video of this woman making food for Thanksgiving, and she was talking about the history of Black Americans and Thanksgiving. And she was talking about how Thanksgiving was one of the first holidays that people who were enslaved were allowed to celebrate. And like many Americans, specifically white Americans who learned about slavery, I'm realizing that my education around the entire topic and history is so skewed and flawed. And the amount of things that I've learned just by following Black creators on TikTok is more than I've ever learned in school. So then I started thinking about the conversations that I had with my parents about slavery when I started learning about it in school. And then it got me thinking, how do Black parents have the conversation about slavery with their children? Is it a conversation that's like you sit down and you lay everything out? Is it like something that you slowly reveal more information about because it's obviously a very traumatic topic? Or for anybody out there, was it something that your parents even talked to you about? Or was it something that was like, oh, learned it in school? This is a 100% genuine question, and I just want to learn the differences of how Black families teach about slavery versus white families.
Openly and proudly Black, the conversation about racism is always happening. It's when the children start to notice that you're talking about racism and they come to you with questions that you actually start the conversations, because there's never a starting point. And we don't start with slavery, we start with racism. Right? You might hear your grandmother huffing and puffing, frustrated about something that she watched on the news. You might see your dad grumbling about the fact that this Black man didn't get elected, and you start to be curious, but you're constantly putting, like children, you're constantly putting together clues. So you don't come to these conversations with like really academic questions. You come to the conversations trying to make sense of your observations in your parents' kind of culture that they've built for you. Now, when it comes to slavery, that's an academic question. Now, in a city like Atlanta, you are going to have teachers who use Black History Month to talk about people who've done things, and they'll say they were enslaved and later on they did this. You're going to have plays and presentations, and so the children are going to constantly hear that. But when my kid came home talking about Thomas Jefferson, her teacher taught about Thomas Jefferson and all the wonderful things he did. I said, yeah, Thomas Jefferson did a lot of things as a politician, but he was ultimately a bad guy. And she said, why? And I said, because Thomas Jefferson had a farm, a really big farm, bigger than he and his family could care for, but he wanted that big farm anyway because he was super greedy. And so instead of hiring people to work that farm and giving them their money, he kidnapped people and forced them to work the farm so he could keep all the money. And if they tried to run away, he beat them. And I looked at her and I waited for her shock and and we sat and had that conversation. But the conversation about slavery tends to come later than the conversation about racism. And it's just a normal part of how we live.
This question across TikTok, and I've loved all of them. They've come from different directions, and I think they're fantastic. For me, I was raised in a household where my parents did what they could to shield us from a lot of things. They wanted to keep us safe, I feel, is what they wanted to do. So we didn't discuss slavery a lot and how our ancestors were enslaved. We watched the movie Roots and got some understanding of what that movie was about and the book and everything, but we didn't go into details about how we were brought over here, how we were kidnapped and brought over here, and everything that went into being enslaved. A lot of what I know, most of what I know, has been from learning myself or from other people that have historical knowledge that I've been able to kind of ascertain from that, and then using that as a jumping off point to understand what slavery was then and how it's still perpetuated here today. I think some of it might also be generational. You know, I'm 44 years old, my mom is 72, and I think that maybe it's not generational. I don't know. The more that I think about it, I think that my parents were just trying to keep my brother and I in this mindset that it's going to get better, or it's better than what it was. All that's to say is that, you know, for the question, how do Black parents teach their children about slavery? Black parents aren't a monolith, and Black people aren't a monolith. But my personal experience, like I mentioned, I really didn't learn much about it at home. I came from a place of being taught respectability politics, knowing my place, knowing how to say the right things, do the right things, show up the right way, many ways to do what I believe my parents kept me safe. I'm also thinking, now that I've sparked something in my head, I'm also thinking, I don't know that not having that specific talk, I don't know if it would have shaped me in a different way. I don't know. You know, it's our history. I'm talking completely in draft. It's our history. It absolutely is our history. It's part of who we are. It's part of who we are, and we see it every day today. It speaks to the resilience. With that being part of our history, it speaks to our resilience. It speaks to our strength. It speaks to our tenacity. All of these things which we would have had even if we weren't kidnapped and brought here and dehumanized and treated like less than human. I'm happy for this question, and oh boy, if I did not create myself some own journaling moments. Thanks for going on this ride with me.
Mine didn't. I had to learn about racism through experiencing it. So I'm a continental African, and I spent most of my life living on the continent, which means I have a certain level of privilege, right? I grew up in predominantly Black spaces. Even living in South Africa, I never experienced racism. That was never a thing. It wasn't until I moved to Switzerland. Mind you, this is a whole other country. I don't speak the language. I was 8 years old. On my first day of school, I was the only Black person in my class. The first day of school, somebody says the N-word to me. I don't know what that is. I asked the teacher what that means. She's like, who said that to you? Oh, this kid said it to me. She sat me down. My teacher's white. My teacher sat me down and explained. I don't know why she was explaining this to an 8-year-old, but she explained it to me, and I was still confused because I was 8. I couldn't compute it. So I go back home to my parents and I tell them what happened, and the conversation was just never had. I just grew up in a world that was inherently racist, and I had to learn with the experiences. So I'm one of those kids whose parents never said anything about it.
We don't talk about slavery. We're more apt to talk about civil rights with our children than we are slavery, and that's two different things. I don't think any of us have the capacity to even be able to begin to discuss with our children what it was like to be a slave. But we can talk about the violation of our rights after we're supposed to be free, because it's still happening today. There is no secret why Black kids don't play with their Black mamas and daddies. There was no need for me to have the conversation with my children that back in slavery times, parents used to beat the crap out of their kids because they had to teach them how to act, because at least after that beating, they would come back alive. There is no need for me to tell my children that if those same children didn't act right, a lot of times they would lose their lives to their slave masters. What's even more disheartening, though, is I can tell my child to this day, I can never put my hands on you. I can be that gentle parent or whatever it is that it's supposed to be. And if you do exactly what you're supposed to do when you go out into the economy, you're going to be treated fairly and nobody is going to do anything to you. But that's not true. See, the conversations that I have to have with my Black kids is that they need to go out into the world and they need to always be on guard and always be on their best behavior. But even then, you might run up on the wrong cop one day that you barely say something sideways to, and you can still lose your life. I've got to have conversations with my kids that even if you go out to go get a coffee and somebody don't like you because of the color of your skin, you got to keep all that anger and all of that emotion that you feel bottled up on the inside because you don't want it to become a problem. I can't talk to my kids about slavery because reality is I'm too busy preparing them for their future.
So in our house, we talked about it slowly, kind of a build to this history. In a lot of households, I think we are trying to emotionally protect our children because we know the world will not protect them when it comes time to have these conversations in school. If you are the lone black kid, when the topic comes up in a classroom, everyone turns to look at you. If you have the wrong kind of history teacher, they're going to try and argue with you that slavery wasn't that bad. And because I have a degree in history and my husband and I both come from families where the person who was enslaved was our grandparents' grandparent, or in one case, grandparents' parent, we are having the kind of conversations you have where slavery is not abstract. Slavery is a very real part of family history. But we also had to prepare our kids for the reality that in school, depending upon teacher, classroom, all of these things, they might hear some things that they would know were not necessarily accurate. And they would need to be able to disagree respectfully. It was not a comfortable experience, right? It was not terrible. My kids were raised in Chicago. They went to schools that were predominantly black, so it was easier. But I definitely know people who went to majority white schools who had teachers that were very slavery denialist, shall we say. That's why we have those news stories, it seems like every year, where someone decides to hold a fake slave auction or decides to have children write about the economic benefits of slavery. It's not by accident. It is a way of undermining the truth of America's history. So you have to build in the wall against the lie, if that makes sense. Hope that answered your question.
So I'm a millennial, born in the 80s, the late 80s. And the way that I learned about slavery was through conversations with my grandmother, who was actually born on a slave plantation. My grandmother is still alive. She's in her mid 80s. She just retired about 3 years ago from working. She worked on a slave plantation up until she was 16 years old. She was born on a slave plantation. Her father was born on a slave plantation. He was a sharecropper. His family was born on a slave plantation. You can literally go to that same slave plantation in Louisiana right now, and you can see the big house, you can see the slave quarters, you can see all that. You can see the very land that my grandparents, my grandmother and her family all worked on. You can see this. In addition to having these conversations about my grandmother's childhood, back when we were growing up, television networks were not shy about talking about slavery in America. Like Disney used to have specials on it regularly. Like there was a show called Night John. I'm sorry, it was a movie. And that was one aspect. When we went to school, we had plays that talk about the Underground Railroad in complete context. And I remember this song in elementary school that they used to teach us called Follow the Drinking Gourd. We also had shows like Reading Rainbow that allowed us to learn about our history through storytelling. And so because of these shows, we were able to ask questions of our parents and our grandparents. Now, that same experience is very different for children today, and it will be very different for my children because a few years ago, they stopped playing Saturday morning cartoons. Shows are not going there the way that they used to on Disney and Nickelodeon. Like there was like full on shows like you would not believe. Like right now you think book banning is something that is hindering us from learning. The way that writers used to really talk about slavery in a way that a child could digest the concept of slavery at its very basic level was very prevalent when we were growing up in the 90s. But our kids don't have that now. So now they learn through TikTok, they learn through Instagram. If they're lucky, they'll be able to find a show. Like I know that the Proud Family does certain episodes where they'll go there about Black history and Kwanzaa and so many other things, but you got to have a subscription to Disney Plus. I know that PBS still does some documentaries, but I don't know about children's shows. I haven't seen that information on Disney and Nickelodeon and Nick Jr. the way that we used to see it. I'd say when it hit the 2010s, things became very different. You literally have to go digging for this information to get it taught to you at a child level. But back to the conversation of how do we discuss slavery? I have textbooks, I have picture books. When my children are old enough, we'll start having conversations about our family history. I will be able to take them to the plantation that my grandmother, their great grandmother, was born on, and we will have conversations. They can still talk to their great grandmother today, and they can literally learn from her today. They also have great aunts. My great aunts are alive, the ones that are older than my grandmother. If they are able to discuss their experiences, because it is a traumatic experience, they will be able to talk to my children. So, in summation, the way that we learn about slavery in our household is through storytelling. And we will continue to tell those stories.
I'll be happy to answer your question, but before I do, I would like to know, what are you doing with this information? I have seen some Black content creators respond to your question, stitching videos giving extraordinarily heartfelt and genuine answers. So what are you doing with our heartfelt, genuine history? This is our history that we're sharing with you, and we're not your sociology project. We're not here to be the cure for your fucking curiosity. So what are you doing with our history? Because the answers that you're getting can be extraordinarily helpful in anti-racism spaces. But are you using this information to promote anti-racism? Are you using this information to improve the quality of our Black lives? Because if we're just answering this question because you're fucking curious, no thank you. And I want a fucking response from you, because there's a whole lot of my people that have given you answers. So you give us an answer. What are you doing with this information? Mr. I'm going viral on Black history, my history. I'm gonna wait for that answer. Y'all boost this up to make sure it gets to him. We wanna know.
Personally, I actually think that most times it's not even a question of how Black families tell their children about slavery, or all of a sudden they start having this conversation. I think something has to happen that has to lead to that said conversation, especially things that has to do with racism, especially how these children are being treated in a space they find themselves. There is this particular stitch I saw one time, and I believe that this teenage does not really know that, it's not educated about racism and all of that. And one thing led to the other, he found himself in white space only, and all of a sudden these people teamed up, and they're all teenagers, and they were all fighting and the word and all of that, like using the N-word and all of that. I believe that someone like that, even if you're not told about races or slavery, that is another kind of that is a start of conversation. I don't think that all of a sudden people will just start telling you or start educating you about it. I think even for those people whose parent does not bring that up, just like the sister that talked about her experience growing up, migrating from South Africa to the Europe, and somebody used the word on her, and all of a sudden the teacher started explaining things to her, and she has to go home, tell the parent, and even though she told the parent about her encounter in school, the parents was not able to explain it fully to her, and until when she grew up and started learning it by herself. Like sometimes I think parents don't even say that until when you start having the experience on your own. Until when you start having experience on your own. And it all starts with racism. That is why sometimes when people talk about how they don't see race, they don't see color, they don't see this, I look at these people as people that are just lying to themselves, because if the world was supposed to be a good place, this conversation will not even be a thing. There won't be a conversation of trying to explain to your child what how slavery started and how racism started. If children are growing up and finding themselves in a society where they are not discriminated, they won't start asking questions, right? And if you don't ask questions, or if you're not treated or discriminated, you won't want to ask questions because it doesn't really matter. But when this question comes in place, it's all based on how you are being treated. Let's just take, for instance, I'm growing up, you know, and one thing led to the other because of the color of my skin, or maybe I've been discriminated. I'm being discriminated on something, or maybe I applied for a job or something, and it was given to someone that I know that I'm more qualified, but because of this person's skin color or whatsoever, the job was given. Like this, something like this, when it happens to you, even though your parents have not told you any form of story about slavery or about racism, you start asking yourself questions like, why? I have all of the qualification, I even have some points more than this person, so why do they have to do this? And this is how the questions, and you have to, anytime there is a question, you need to look for answers, and this is how the answers, and this is how the quest to look for answers begin. And you start by asking, if you can't get your answers from your own one or two put up, then you ask answers, you look for answers, maybe from your parents or your friends and family, someone that have been treated the same way or the same feel, like, I think it's maybe perhaps because we have the same color. And this is how you maybe get to your parents. And if your parents does not really want you to feel bad, I think most parents will just try to like tell you one or two things to still make you feel better. But there's some parents who are very open out, like who want to open up to you so that you will actually know the society that you are, that you are being baited. So I think all these things boils down to how the society treats you individually as a black person. And also when you are being born in a society whereby the society favors some group of people, like parents are obligated, or maybe some parents who want to like not to take you on a way to actually know the society that you are, so that when something like that happens, you don't start asking questions and maybe getting answers from the wrong person. So I think different individually, everyone one way or the other have different ways of talking about slavery or racism or discrimination. But I bet you all of this conversation did not actually start just like slavery. No, it all started with maybe being discriminated, or maybe being racist towards, and because of that, as a child growing up, you want to ask questions, and because of that, you are being told the origin of all of how it all started. Like when I saw these stitches, I actually wanted to see if there are some pan-colored people whom parents have told questions have yet to. I think I need to make more research, because I also want to know how this conversation is in the white family. Anyway, lovely, so not just leave me your own thought in the comment section of what you think of this video. And please do not forget that we do not support any form of bullying and harassment. We're just here for educational and informative purposes. So please share this video, subscribe to this channel if you're here to do that, like, and I will see you when I upload the next one.
Me your own thought in the comment section of what you think of this video. Please do not forget that we do not support any form of bullying and harassment. We're just here for educational and informative purposes. So please share this video, subscribe, leave a thought, and I will see you, lovers, when I upload the next one.